Derbyites, we are back once again to talk about for once, the categories that we most care about, it seems, is comedy. Normally about comedy, I'm like, yeah, whatever. Don't really care about comedy because there's like 3 really good shows and the rest of them are filler. That is not the case this year. There are so many amazing comedy series, and the nominees this year are sensational. So I'm so excited to be able to talk about it with my 2 pals, Charles Bright and Tony Ruiz. Guys, let's go straight to comedy series because, like, honestly, I could make an argument for Only Murders in the Building, Ted Lasso, Hacks, Abbott Elementary, Barry, Marvelous Mrs. Maisel, What We Do in the Shadows, and Curb Your Enthusiasm. Really great that they're nominated. I just don't see any of those 3 shows, which is odd because Marvelous Mrs. Maisel used to be, a huge favorite of the Emmys. It didn't get writing or directing, so I feel like it's probably not in the mix. So like, I don't know what to say. I'm kind of actually predicting at this point in time, Only Murders. Coming off that 2nd season, you 2 know, we've been talking about this offline, how much we love that show and how amazing the season 2 finale was. So I just feel like that it could win. But yeah, I'm really interested to see what you think. Charlie, what do you think about comedy series? It's a real tough one.
So I initially had Hacks winning this. For some reason, I felt like that Hacks was going to be the one to beat, but because there are so many, again, this is one of those things where there are so many viable options that I'm sort of just defaulting to what I think defaulting to the default. And I think that's Ted Lasso. So I do have Ted Lasso winning right now. But at number 2, I have Abbott Elementary. This is a show that that I was looking at my predictions and I said to myself, Abbott Elementary feels like it could kind of pull off this Arrested Development kind of thing. So, but I was looking at it, and it doesn't have a directing nomination, and it also doesn't have an editing nomination. If it had gotten those 2, I might even be picking it to win. But it's still there, and still did really well. So I think it's really in this race. But I think so I have Ted, Abbott, Hacks, then Barry, then Only Murders down in 5th. I don't really see that happening because of the 2nd season. As great as the 2nd season was, I absolutely enjoyed it. But I don't see that happening.
Tony, I know that you are the number 1 fan on this planet for Barry. Do you think it will win comedy series?
It could, but I have it in 3rd right now. My top 5 is there's very little separating them, which is why I'm currently going with Ted Lasso. But I have Only Murders in 2nd because, again, when you have something airing during voting and making big news during voting, that can go a long way, particularly when we're not doing the small blue ribbon panels anymore. And I think Only Murders has developed this following that can only be described as being like, oh my God, everybody's talking about it. I mean, Only Murders has been the water cooler show during Emmy voting. Ted Lasso, in a lot of ways, was in this very position last year where season 2 was airing during Emmy voting. And this year, it's Only Murders that's airing during Emmy voting. And I think that could really, really help it, especially since season 1 was strong and season 2 is strong, if not stronger. So I have Only Murders in 2nd, and I might be tempted to move it up because it's been, Ted Lasso aired so long ago that I'm wondering if it might be just a little too far in the distance. But again, it did so well with the nominations overall that I think when you don't have a clear alternative to the frontrunner, when you have multiple alternatives to the frontrunner, then I think you go with the frontrunner. But I have Barry in 3rd because I think Barry will win a few. Again, this season was unlike anything I've ever seen, comedy or drama. But I'm wondering if it maybe lacks kind of the populist appeal that both Ted Lasso and Only Murders. And I agree with Charlie that if Abbott had at least the directing nod, even if it didn't have the editing nod, but if it had the directing nod, I would seriously consider putting it higher up, but I still have it in my top 5.
And, you know, I will say, if we go with this logic about Only Murders in the Building, I would think that could give a boost, maybe not to win, but to what we do in the shadows as well, because that 4th season has been very well received. This is a show that is still managing to knock it out of the park, and show that it wasn't just like it was that, you know, its excellent 2nd and 3rd seasons weren't flukes. So, and this is also something that has nomination, I believe, in both writing. Is it nominated in directing?
I don't think it's nominated in directing.
It's not nominated in directing, but it did
yeah.
get 2 writing nominations.
Yeah.
And so I would, you know, I keep my eye out for that, you know, if you're going to go by that logic with Only Murders.
I think if what we do in the shadows had earned some acting nominations,
yeah,
I would tend to agree with that. The thing is that Only Murders has the acting nominations to go with it.
It does. Only Murders and What We Do in the Shadows, I think, are the only 2, could be wrong, in this category with 100% on Rotten Tomatoes as well, which is very impressive.
Do you not see Selena Gomez missing out in Comedy Actress as a detriment?
Yeah, I do. I do think that's an issue. That is a real issue.
I do think it is an issue. I think the problem there is I think people kind of slept on Selena Gomez in the 1st season, but I think during the 2nd season, you know, she really got a showcase.
She's very funny.
She has, you know, they dialed up the humor on that character, but they also gave her a real spotlight episode that I think people weren't expecting.
You know what I find really interesting as well about Hacks and Ted Lasso to a slightly lesser extent is the amount of acting nominations that it was able to capture. You know, multiple actors in the same category. That indicates a lot of support for Hacks. And for a while there, just like Charlie was saying earlier, I had a feeling Hacks was probably the spoiler for Ted Lasso, because we all agree Ted Lasso is generally the front runner. Yeah, and I know Matt Noble, who couldn't join us for this chat, he is predicting Ted Lasso pretty much across the board, which is, you know, pretty smart actually. It's still a very popular show and beloved and critically acclaimed. So this is one to watch.
Give us season 3, damn it!
Hurry up! I'm waiting. When we look at comedy actress, queen of the Emmys, Jean Smart, is one of the lockiest of the night, dare I say. And it's a slight shame because although I'd be happy for her to win, because I mean, God, in season 2, she blew my mind. I would also be really happy if Quinta Brunson would win, and not just for creating and writing such a wonderful show, but her acting in Abbott Elementary is really, really good. And I must say also, I know The Marvelous Mrs. Maisel is no longer the show of the moment, the flavor of the month, but, you know, Rachel Brosnahan is very, very good in that show too, as is Elle Fanning in The Great. Issa Rae and Kaylee Cuoco also brilliant. So Jean Smart's going to win, right? You guys think otherwise?
I was one of the people that was advocating for Hannah Waddingham to move up to this category. And I still think that if she was in here, she'd stand it. It would be a much more interesting race. I think Jean Smart would still prevail, and I think she will. And I agree with you. I think her biggest competition is Quinta Brunson, but I do think Jean Smart. This is the one that usually with the Emmys, nothing feels safe, but this is as safe as I can feel for the Emmys.
Yeah, agreed. Complete agreed. I think it's smart, and I think there is a chance for Brunson to upset. But I think the safe money is on Smart. And but if Jean Smart wins, I'll be thrilled. If Quinta Brunson wins, I'll be thrilled.
Yeah.
But I really think it's down to those 2.
If any of these win, to be honest, I'd be pretty thrilled.
Actually, if Kaylee Cuoco won, I'd do a cartwheel because her performance in the 2nd season of The Flight Attendant was outstanding.
It's good to see her nominated. I'm glad they didn't fall asleep, as we like to say on that show, too much. So you know what? Normally when there's a huge front runner, I get slightly disappointed when they win because we saw it coming. But with Jean Smart, I just feel like that's one front runner that absolutely deserves that title, because I can't say enough about her in Hacks. She's phenomenal. Moving over to comedy actor, that's a tough one, because I would say Nicholas Hoult and Donald Glover are probably not in contention. Then you've got Jason Sudeikis, who I know Matt Noble is predicting, and Bill Hader, who has won before and is the heart and soul of Barry. And then, of course, Martin Short and Steve Martin. I don't even know how you separate them two, because everyone seems to have a favorite for that show. Mine is Martin Short, but I mean, Steve Martin as well is like a legend. So I'm going with Bill Hader. I just feel like it's the safest choice. Bill Hader, once again, just the as an actor, not necessarily as the funniest, but as an actor, I was just completely blown away by his performance. I don't know. What do you think, Tony? It's hard.
It is hard. It is hard. And you know, again, my bias is definitely towards Hader. I think what helps is that Hader has never lost in this category. It's been 3 years since he won, but he also won twice in a row. And the first time he won was quite a shock. Was surprising to people, because at that year, a lot of people were predicting Donald Glover for the Teddy Perkins episode of Atlanta. And but I think what we've seen with Hader is that with each year that goes by, he shows new depths as an actor that I think a lot of people weren't expecting. And yeah, his submission is the finale, and it's dark for sure. But again, the category is not funniest actor. The category is lead actor in a comedy series. So I have Hader winning. I think Sudeikis is very close. When it comes to Steve Martin and Martin Short, what's really interesting here is that if you're going totally based on the actual season that they're nominated for, you know, Steve Martin has that brilliant finale from season 1, where he does this huge physical comedy shtick of being poisoned, and it's so funny. But really, in just my opinion, I think the real star of the second season, which was airing during Emmy voting, between the two of them was actually Martin Short. Martin Short had a much more front and center storyline in the second season, and he is actually the one that is the more comedic performance. So I don't think you can necessarily separate. I think that's one case where vote splitting could easily happen. But I think this does come down to Hader and Sudeikis, and I think Hader has the edge.
Yeah, I'm kind of on the same page too. It's so tough because just like you said, Tony, when I look at Martin Short and Steve Martin, you know, Martin Short overall through that first season was much more the comedic performance that you take notice of. And then the finale came, and Steve Martin has that incredible physical comedy, but something that we have not seen him do in a long, long time.
Since All of Me.
All of Me and The Jerk, especially All of Me. It reminded me so much of All of Me, back in Bowl, and the whole, oh my God, that movie's the best. Anyway, go on.
So, that one is really tough to go on. And then Sudeikis, in addition to, you know, being last year, he's also, in all fairness, he's never lost in this category either. But he's, he has No Weddings and a Funeral, where, you know, he's absolutely incredible in. But I am going with Bill Hader on this one. It seems like, you know, like that's the consensus area of the past 2 seasons of Barry, where they're like, okay, we'll recognize it here.
Yeah,
and I see no reason for that to change.
It's tough. Let's move on to the directing and writing categories. I'm going with Abbott Elementary in writing, although I mean, Only Murders could take it. They've only got that one nomination as well. So does Hacks, and Ted Lasso. So it's tough. What We Do in the Shadows and Barry both have 2 each, which put them at a slight disadvantage. I just think Abbott Elementary could walk away with nothing except for that. that I can see that as a possibility. What do you think, Charlie, in writing? Oh, by the way, and directing, I think that's just going to go to Barry 710 North. I just can't imagine any other possibility there.
So I also have Abbott Elementary in the writing category, but I am also very, very wary of Hacks. It won this category last year. I think it has that admiration. It's a very well-written show. But then you also have Ted Lasso with one of the most nominated episodes of any show this year, with the No Weddings at a Funeral episode. I think those are really the ones that are the most in contention. The weird thing about Only Murders in the Building is they're up for the pilot, and I actually think that's one of the weaker episodes of the first season. It took a little while for that show to really get going, and so I actually had that down in 6th place. But I would love it if the Wellness Center from What We Do in the Shadows had more of a chance of it, because that episode is just pure brilliance all around. But yeah, so I think it's Abbott, but Hacks and Ted Lasso very, very close. And with directing, I have Barry right now for 710 North, but I am so tempted to put in, and I know it seems like I've been shitting on Only Murders in the Building, which I do love. This is one, The Boy from 6B is a prime, like that is another one with, like 710 North for Barry, is an incredibly directed episode, and so well done, and put together so brilliantly. So I'm very, very torn between those two. And then, of course, and then Hacks won this category last year, which surprised me a little bit that it picked up this award. So it could definitely do it again. But so right now I have Barry, but Only Murders for Boy from 6B. I very well could switch to that very soon.
Can I just say, Tony, before you go on, that Boy from 6B, I was very close to also predicting it, and then I just went with the 710 North. I know, Tony, that you didn't like 710 North. It wasn't like it didn't work for you.
It didn't do it for me.
Yeah.
Shallow and pedantic.
So I know aren't you predicting the Ms. Pat show in directing? Tony?
Right. What? The what?
Yeah. You don't watch BET Plus or whatever it's called?
You know what's funny?
I do want the words "Baby Daddy Groundhog Day" on an Emmy trophy at some point.
I do.
That would be hilarious. Look, here's the funny thing is that I think for a lot of people, some people are saying, well, if Hader couldn't win for the Ronnie Lilly episode from season 2, is he going to win for this? And my response to that is like, yeah, but that was the year of Fleabag.
That was the sweep. Yeah, that was the sweep.
That was the sweep of Fleabag. And I don't see this as the same thing. I agree that I think it's actually going to be, I'm predicting 710 North, which to me is just astonishing. I've watched that episode probably 4 or 5 times, and there are still moments I don't understand how they did it, even though I've talked to all the people who did that episode and I still don't understand. But I think that I think that's where the consensus is going to go. I could see it going to either, I have Boy from 6B, I think in 3rd, and I'm really tempted to put it up to 2nd. The only thing that keeps me from doing that is that there's another directing nominee in that category. So I have 710 North in front, but I don't think it's a lock by any means. Writing, I have Abbott Elementary. To be a broadcast show and break through this way, the way that show has in its first season, is quite something. And I feel like this is the place where they'll be able to reward Quinta Brunson.
Yeah. Finally, let's talk about the supporting categories. They're really tough as well. What a surprise. I know Matt's going for Brett Goldstein, wanting him to repeat from last year, and that's fair enough. I could totally see that happening. I would love to see Janelle James or Cheryl Lee Ralph win for Abbott Elementary, and I would also love to see Tahib Jamo win from Ted Lasso. But I really believe that Hannah Einbinder is going to win from Hacks. I don't know. I really can't explain it. And on the men's side, I feel like it's Henry Winkler versus Anthony Carrigan, and I'm just nudging towards Anthony Carrigan. So that's where I'm at with those two categories. I'm going to be swapping and changing right until the last second. So Tony, what do you think?
Yeah, I'm going slightly different. I'm going with Janelle James for supporting actress. That character is just the breakout character of the season.
Yeah.
Um,
Of the whole season, of every show. Like
of the whole season of
that's like a
every
Megan
show.
Mullally type performance.
That's what Brett Goldstein and Hannah Waddingham were last year.
Yeah.
Is what Janelle James is this year. Now, I think I have Waddingham in second, and I might change to Waddingham. I don't see Einbinder necessarily. I don't know why I don't, but I just don't know if there's the enthusiasm. Whereas, with Waddingham, she's charming as hell. Just as a person, just as a human being. She gave that great speech last year where she's screaming at the top of her lungs in a way
That's
that
how they started off the night.
yeah. Or Hannah Waddington, as Seth Rogen said.
What an idiot.
But this is a category. The supporting categories love their breakouts. They love their breakout stars. They love the and I think Janelle James fits that she's this larger than life character who should be somebody you don't like, but you just love this character, as incompetent as she is at everything.
Can't wait for her to be on the screen. I'm waiting.
You can't wait. When is she going to say something completely ridiculous, offensive that should be reported to HR? For supporting actor, I am very torn. I feel like the safe money's on Brett Goldstein, but I'm actually going to go with Henry Winkler because Henry Winkler has, I think, in the narrative of Barry, he really had the moment in the finale when Cousineau basically is standing there as Barry's getting arrested. It's one of the greatest shots of television, and he's just staring daggers at Barry. And so I think one of Henry Winkler's greatest performances. That being said, Goldstein, I think, is magnificent, and I think could easily win. But then you have Anthony Carrigan, who really is, in a show as dark as Barry is really both the comedy and the heart, even though he's a Chechen mobster.
He's funny.
He's so funny that, and the episode that he submitted, the premiere where he goes in for his first interrogation, he's like, "It's my first interrogation.
I am legit nervous.
I'm legit nervous. Ciao, babies."
Yeah, Charlie, I know that
It's
that
like
you're on the
the
Carrigan train.
philosopher says, "Get rich or die trying."
Yeah, he's just so
get
damn
busy
good.
living or die trying.
That's right. That's what it is. That's what it is.
Oh, he's funny, man.
Where I
know
actually
that
do
you're
think
on the
Carrigan,
Carrigan
where I
train.
actually
Talk
do-
me through it.
Can I just add a little quick thing?
Yes.
The one thing where I think Carrigan has actually helped is that, he submitted a very funny episode as a very funny comic performance in his submission. But then he's also on Winkler's tape, which is also Hader's tape, which is also nominated for writing. And it's the whole thing where Hank is trapped in that kind of prison with the panther off screen. And it's a very dramatic and very intense scene. So he gets this range that, we hadn't really quite seen from him. So I think it's going to be Winkler, Goldstein, or Carrigan. I think it's going to be one of those three.
So in supporting actress, I do have Hannah Waddingham. I've had her since the beginning, with Janelle James in there as well. It's so tough. And it's, again, one of those things where I think Hannah Waddingham's kind of default because she won last year, and she was and she was just as good in the second season of Ted Lasso as she was in the first. So they just found any reason for her to sing, any way that they could just shove it in there, they did. And of course, she knocks it out of the park every time. I also have Janelle James number 2, because that just makes sense. Again, she's that breakout character. Then in third, one to keep an eye out for, I think, is Sarah Niles, because I think she is so I think she's one of those ones that's so she holds her cards very close to her, but by the end of her arc, you absolutely are in love with her, and she's so good. But I think Hannah Waddingham is the safer of supporting actress or supporting actor. I feel more certain about Waddingham. Supporting actor is just a mind fuck. I have Brett Goldstein right now, although initially when the nominations first came out, I had Anthony Carrigan there for much of the same reasons that you talked about, Tony. I moved him down to 3. Brett Goldstein I have at number 1 because, again, he is just like, Roy Kent. It was so fun to see Roy Kent in this new stage of his career and his life. But there's one person that I'm very surprised you guys aren't talking about, and that's Nick Mohammed. Nick Mohammed, by the end, and it's sort of like, who was the person you were talking about? Like Matthew McFadden in Succession. Because of what happens in the finale, you find yourself going back and looking at those episodes. And Nick Mohammed's Twitter, because he knew it was gonna blow up when the finale happened. And he actually posted on Twitter like all these clues that we had seen, and it was what everyone was talking about afterwards. Like, and yes, he's a villain, but man, he plays it so well, and it is an arc where you see the transfer. You see, sort of like with Walter White in Breaking Bad, you see this monster sort of unleashed on the world, and I have him in second. I think he's very much in this hunt. And I would also put Bowen Yang because he is just like such a figure now that, just on popularity alone, just for the fact that, so many people like him, that he could win. And let me tell you something, even if Tyler James Williams were to win, that would be insanely fantastic because he is so adept at playing so many different types of humor on that show. It's just, again, this is these 2 categories are magnificent. But again, I'm going with Brett Goldstein, but Nick Mohammed and Anthony Carrigan are right there.
Well, I think that's a perfect time.
They also love these categories love repeat winners. We haven't had one in a couple of years in comedy supporting actress, but remember, Alex Borstein won 2 in a row, Kate McKinnon won 2 in a row, and you have to go back a bit further, but you can get to, in supporting actor, people like Tony Hale and Ty Burrell and Eric Stonestreet winning multiple Emmys.
Yeah, absolutely. Michael Richards and Doris Roberts and so forth and so on. We'll leave it there. Thank you, everybody, for joining us today. I hope that's given you some insight or not confused you to death or not. But this is where we're at right now. We're getting closer to Emmy night, and we will also be doing a pre and post primetime Emmys night show as well, as usual. The best coverage is at Gold Derby, everybody. And we look forward to enjoying Emmy season with you all. Thank you, Charlie and Tony, for your time, and see you all soon.